presentar a Dmitry Politov. Él es un experto en genética de poblaciones y recursos genéticos forestales. Es coordinador de la División Científica UFRO 2 de Recursos Genéticos, ¿sí?, para Europa del Este. Es miembro del Consejo Central de la Sociedad Vavilov de Genetistas y Creadores y es miembro del Comité Editorial de la revista científica Genética. El doctor Dmitry es graduado de la Universidad Estatal Lomonosov de Moscú, egresado de la Facultad de Biología, con especialidad en zoología y botánica, biólogo de formación, doctorado en genética en el Instituto Vavilov de Genética General. ¿Sí? Su tesis doctoral fue Polimorfismo de la alosima, diferenciación genética y sistema para el mestizaje de la piedra del pino Siberia. Ha trabajado con poblaciones e interrelaciones evolutivas de especies en diferentes familias de pinos. Es titular del Laboratorio de Genética de Poblaciones del académico Yuri Altukov del Instituto Vavilov de Genética Forestal. Con ustedes, el doctor Dmitry Politov.
Buenos días, estimados señoras y señores. My talk will be in English, sorry for that. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this remarkable forest forum in Durango for my invitation as a speaker. This forum provides good opportunity for forest specialists from both Americas and Europe to exchange knowledge and finally help forests to sustain, thrive, and people related to forest to prosper. My talk will be about forest and forestry in Russia. Russia occupies about 1/7 of the world's land and 20% of the forest territory of the world is in Russia, comprising more than 800 million hectares. The industrial forests rented for logging comprise over 170 million hectares, and annual industrial harvest is about 200 million. In Russia, we have only public property for forest and national level forest laws and regulations. As you can see from this slide, Russia takes the first place in the world for forested area over Brazil, about 2 times. I would be happy if it were standing of football teams after Football World Cup that will take place in Russia soon. But unfortunately, these are just dreams. Forest resource assessment takes that Russia has about 1/5 of the world forest by area. And this forest is unevenly distributed over Russian territory with different forest coverage in different regions. In the north, we have Arctic desert, tundra, and forest tundra. Then we have broad taiga zone. Here we have also broad-leaved forest, and the density of these stands is depending on particular environment. By land use, we have about 50% of the territory for forest. Another forest use is agricultural, the blue one, and other about 50% is forested area. We have the following categories of forest land. First of all, these are lands of forest fund that comprise about 860 million hectares. Also, forest grows on land for defense and safety, urban land, nature protection territories, and other. Forest of Russia is very diverse. As I said, there are different climatic zones. Different climatic zones. And we have different forests in different regions. First of all, this is dark coniferous taiga. Here we see it in red. Large forest occupies very vast territories in eastern Siberia and central Siberia. Broad-leaved forest is in Caucasus region, in southern Urals, and in the south of Russian Far East.
Sí.
Stone birch and dwarf Siberian pine they are not large trees, but they also occupy vast territories in Far East. Mostly secondary forest, shown here in blue, represents mostly birch and aspen. And we have also other or not forested land which potentially can be forested in the future. Some of the forest landscape may be familiar to you, and some are quite different what you have here in the tropical and subtropical zone. For example, this is pine forest, which looks about the same as in Mexico, and this is a birch forest in winter time. This is large forest in eastern Siberia in autumn. Looks quite different from other forest types. This is again birch forest, and we have also many types of forest grown in diverse growth conditions. Most of them are harsh, and that ensures very slow growth on most territory, especially on permafrost region. The dynamics of forest land shows quite stable values, and about 900 million hectares remains from 1990s up to now with slightly positive dynamics. Growing stock altogether comprises 80 billion cubic meters, and annual increment totally about 1 billion, and annual increment available for exploitation about 500 million. Final felling dynamics reached its peak in 1960s and till 1980s, exceeding 300 million cubic meters per year. This felling took place mostly in richly wooded regions along May, overland and waterways, and the result was the exhaustion of saw timber as the most profit-making resource in view of the shortage of technologically advanced wood processing. In the 1990s, the transition to an unregulated market economy was accompanied by a threefold decrease in the amount of harvesting wood, a twofold decrease in richly wooded regions, which shown in red here. Major forest-forming trees in Russia are large, then Scots pine, birch, spruce, Siberian stone pine, while broadleaf species are now in very low amount. Here we see some dynamics of several important indicators of monitoring in the forest sector. This slide represents number of forest fires that gradually decreases from 2000 to present state. Other fire-related indicators also goes down, but this only reflects official statistics. Reforested area gradually increases, and these statistics comprises of new forest cultures shown in orange here and promotional of natural regeneration and combined reforestation shown in green. Industrial roundwood production in Russia takes the third place in the world, and dynamics by year is also positive for industrial roundwood and for several other important indicators like plywood production, paper, saw logs. The only thing, like in the time of world crisis of 2008, we had this drop down, and after 1999 we have also drop down of production of wood as fuel. Wood product of Russian Federation comprise of roundwood, sawn wood, plywood, particle board, fiberboard, and pulp. And positive dynamics of processed wood over roundwood is evident from this bottom picture. Also, the export of basic forest products in the Russian Federation has tendency to increasing the ratio of processed wood, like sawn wood, as compared to round wood. The bottom is domestic consumption of sawn wood and wood-based panels, which also gradually increasing last years. Forest policy. The key document that regulates forest policy in Russia is Forest Code, accepted in 2006 and substantially revised last year in July. There are also several documents at the level of Russian Federation government resolution that supplement the basic document, which is called Forest Code. The goals of forest policy in Russia are effective forestry sector management, intensive forest use model, mature domestic market, increased competitiveness of forestry industry, efficient protection and conservation of forests, good quality regeneration of forests, increased environmental role of forest, high scientific, technological, and staff potential in the forest sector, development of international cooperation, and citizen input in forest policy making. Russia takes part in international programs on sustainable production and consumption of forest products under these documents. And we have interdepartmental cooperation and interaction in formulating a strategy of development in the forest complex up to 2030. There is an expert advisory board allocated at the Ministry of Industry and Trade with several working groups, like Group for Forest Sector at the Agency of Forest, at the Ministry of Industry and Trade, cellulose and paper industry, wood building construction, furniture and plywood, and bioenergy. All these are working group at this expert advisory board. The social cultural value of Russian forest is invaluable because millions of people depending on forest, especially in rural communities, they use different forest products for subsistence, additional income, recreation. And for city dwellers, forest is very attractive for its recreational value. Forest plays also important role in human ecology. It is a source of clean water and air. It's invaluable also for carbon sequestration and for other ecological functions. Forest is very important also for preserving biodiversity because many plants, animals, and other organisms associated with forest ecosystems are dependent on major edificator species, which are tree species. About 75,000 people are employed in the forest sector now, which is the state-managed sector. And after drop down in the time of 2008, we have stable situation with the employees number in this sector. Education. There was a poll or questionnaire. People working in forest sector were asked what universities they think are most important in obtaining well-qualified staff in forest sector, and altogether in their answers 49 universities were present. But if we delete results under 4%, the most important universities are St. Petersburg State Forest Technical University, named after Kirov, then Moscow State Forest University, which is now a branch of Bauman Moscow State Technical University in Mytishi near Moscow, Ural State Forest Technical University in Yekaterinburg, Voronezh State Forest Academy in Voronezh, and also institutes in Syktyvkar, Yoshkar-Ola, and Siberian State Technological University in Krasnoyarsk. Now we go from positive part to existing problems. Since I'm not representative of official state organs, I tried making this presentation to evolve also information from non-governmental organizations, and this section will be based mostly on sources like WWF, Greenpeace, which usually provide opinions opposite to governmental, helping us to create something closer to real picture. Only about 1/4 of forested area in Russia is available for profitable exploitation when income can exceed expenses. This is mostly due to remoteness of these regions where forests exist, but infrastructure is absent. About 1/3 of the forested area in Russia is occupied by immature multi-age stands, including pristine forest on subalpine and permafrost soils. These stands are generally low productive. Some of them have only 1 cubic meter increment per hectare per year. They are quite vulnerable, and in case of exploitation can hardly be reforested in near future. This depends on many factors, including irregular and low seed production and the ineffectiveness of reforestation from seed sources that come from other regions. Decreasing of logging age from 140 years, this was the standard in Soviet time, to gradually 120, then 100, then even 80 years in the period of 1990 to 2000. All this has led to low standing volume stands. And other sources of concern are forests damaged by fires. Annually, we lose almost 6 to 8 million hectares, according to satellite data, mostly comes from Russian Academy of Sciences. Another concern is illegal logging. There is no official statistics how serious is this problem, but the independent evaluation says it could be even up to 40 million cubic meters per year. Extensive forest management in the former years has led to large-scale transformation of tree species composition in secondary growth forest. From conifers and broadleaf species like oaks, they were transformed to soft-leaved species, tree species like aspen and birch, both with low value to the industry. So we can conclude that the, one back please. Back please. Yeah. So the key result of the 10 or already 12 years of implementation of forest code is like timber is over. Almost all logging and processing industries are facing shortage of affordable timber because the average transportation distance for pulp and paper now exceeds 250 kilometers as average from the felling site to a paper mill. The key reason, there's no effective pre-commercial thinning of these forests, so valuable softwoods are overgrown by aspen and birch, and logging enterprises basically have no choice but to move further to pristine forest and forest of high conservation value. This is the persisting problems for last 15 years. So why growing timber in secondary forest is better compared to logging in intact forest landscapes, according to WWF? In this case, we have no destruction in intact ecosystems, conserved natural biodiversity, less pressure on these high conservation value forest, and by this we have happy non-governmental organizations. We have less transportation costs to move timber from secondary forest compared to long-distance driving from forest of pristine and low-touched forests, so we have happy companies because they save money. Investments into forestry and roads in secondary forest will work for rural development and employment, so we basically have also happy government and communities. So by all this preservation of intact forest landscape and more intensive but sustainable forest management in secondary forest provides us shared values for all participants of the process. We also have another problem. After breakdown of the Soviet Union and crash of donated agriculture in many regions, we've got about 31 million hectares of abandoned agricultural land covered by forest. In the central European part of Russia, there's 8 million hectares, and for the whole country it can even exceed 35 to 70 million hectares. And technically, this land can be used for forest plantations if legal opportunities and simple rules for forestry on private lands are provided. At the moment, we have the Article 78 of the Land Code of Russia, which does not allow forestry on agricultural land, and this approach brings attention to this problem. It should be solved on the governmental level. Also, the problem with Russian intact forest landscapes mostly depend on the key factors that have already led to decrease by area in 7.5% from 276 to 255 million hectares of intact forest landscapes. The key factors of this loss were man-caused fires, logging, and mining. Another key destruction factor, fires, is indirect, and roads mostly promote the probability of forest fires 2 times higher. Roads also are accessed for poachers, and the key areas of destruction of intact forest landscapes are located in these regions, in Yakutia, in Irkutsk area, and in Krasnoyarsk Krai. In European Russia, in the north of European Russia, we also have pristine and low destroyed forest territories. And they are also at risk, which is shown by red and yellow color, which indicates loss or coming loss of these stands. Okay, one back. Boreal forests are at risk also due to climatic change and decreasing resistance to pests and pathogens. The bright example is the situation with spruce in Moscow region, very close to Federal Agency of Forest. In 2010, we have very severe drought. And after that, European spruce bark beetle, Ips typographus, attacked spruce stands, and until now already 60,000 hectares of spruce forest is dead because of this pest. The area of sanitary cutting in the period from 2012 to 2014 exceeded 40 or even 45,000 hectares. Sorry. Forest fires. The map above indicates the areas subjected to fires most frequently. They are mostly in the south and not only in summertime. Also, we frequently meet fires in forest landscapes in springtime also, even in April. The next part of my presentation will be about forest genetic resources of Russia. In 2012-2013, we prepared a big state report of Russian Federation to FAO, which then was included and used in compiling the state of the world forest genetic resources by FAO. So, principal features of Russian forest genetic resources. We have about 12,500 species of wild vascular plants belonging to 1,488 genera and 196 families with many endemic species and some genera. We have mostly boreal forests with relatively few dominating tree species. These are larch, Siberian larch, Daurian larch, and several other species, Scots pine, stone pine, Siberian stone pine, Korean pine, and dwarf Siberian pine, spruce species, which also include so-called pure species, Norway spruce, Siberian spruce, Korean spruce, and broad intermediate hybrid zone between them with a zone of intergradation of basic distinctive traits of the species. We have also fir, Abies sibirica, Caucasian fir, Abies nordmandiana, East Siberian fir, Abies nephrolepis, and Sakhalin fir, Abies sakhalinensis. Birch species include Betula pendula, Betula pubescens, and several species in the Far East. Some of them represent so-called stone birch. Aspen, Populus tremula, is widespread, but the quality of its wood is low because of the stem rot. We have several other poplar species like black poplar, Maximovich poplar, and several others in the eastern part of the country. We have some Alnus species, a lot of willows with estimated 30 to 50 species and hybrids between them, several lime tree, tilia, and several oaks, with predominant pedunculate oak in Europe and Mongolian oak in the Russian Far East. Next, please. Next, please. To preserve forest genetic resources of Russia, the several measures of in situ conservation were undertaken. The maps represent location of genetic reserves by predominant species listed here, permanent seed orchards of different species, location of plus trees and plus stands. The dominating target species are different depending on the particular region. And this slide shows the share of forest genetic resource in relation to the area of forest dominated by respective forest forming species. That means the representation of different species on protected area and non-protected area is different. Next, please. There were several attempts to use molecular genetic markers to characterize both within and within species genetic variation, and which includes intra and interpopulation variability. Different molecular genetic markers were applied, and we also used the technology of digital genetic cartography, representing extrapolated values of allele or genotype frequency or basic genetic parameters like heterozygosity, allelic richness, etc., in the form of digital map where low values are indicated by cold colors and high values by warm colors. This is particular case for Scots pine with heterozygosity throughout its range. Next, please. Yeah, this is results of application of molecular markers to study genetic parameters of Siberian stone pine along geographical coordinates and environmental parameters. This pine is very remarkable for its edible seeds and occupies vast area in western, central, and eastern Siberia. Another group of measures was undertaken to preserve the genetic resources of forest species. This is ex situ conservation methods. Different techniques were applied. Establishment and maintenance of collections of living organisms in form of arboreta, clonal archives, botanical gardens, mother plantations, provenance trials, etc. Then propagation of plants for their subsequent reintroduction into nature. So by this we created a lot of special nurseries, arboreta, seed farms, etc. establishment and maintenance of plant tissue culture collections, which is quite popular, especially for individual genotypes with high potential resource value. Establishment and maintenance of gene banks, including cryobanks and seed banks. As to cryobanks, there was a large idea to use permafrost. Russia is quite rich in permafrost regions, and in some Yakutian mines in the mountains, there is permanent, constant minus temperature, which can be used for storage of seeds of major plants without, almost without any cost. Similar project was run in Spitsbergen, as much as I know, by Norwegians and international community. There is a lot of provenance trials, and the map indicates their distribution with also different schemes and different species, which include, first of all, Scots pine, Norway and Siberian spruce, stone pines, different large species, oak, and to less degree, beech. Biotechnology. We have the so-called Bio 2020 technological platform, which is the platform for interdepartmental discussion of problems for innovations in biotechnology area, including forest sector. This assumes implementation of molecular genetic markers, marker-aided selection, genomic studies, microclonal propagation of the best genotypes with control of their identity by molecular genetic markers. And also, to some degree, it assumes transgenic organisms, but at the moment, Russia has no legislation for its practical use, because there's no way how you can go with transgenic organisms from laboratory to the wild. Special problem is the control of illegal logging. Unlike tropical countries in the boreal zone, it doesn't work at all. In boreal zone, we need to identify just a few species, but all of them have huge ranges. So the task becomes more difficult because the genetic distance between the compared objects are very low. They are not different species. And normally we need to identify populations, local populations or regional populations. And this makes the task more like resource consuming in many senses. Because first of all, we need to investigate huge ranges, create databases, and this work just started and it's underway. Another issue is the passportization of seed orchard and certification of different seed lots. There are simple techniques like microsatellite analysis. Please press it several times again. Hello? This is the application of molecular techniques, the microsatellite markers, to find out which clones are presented at seed orchard plantations of European Norway spruce. Okay, this is how it works. If we find alleles that are not presented among those genotypes that should be among clones on this plantation, we can say this is alien pollen or alien tree that should not be there. Also, we try to implement the genomic data to develop new generation markers related to adaptation. The example is the use of genomic data from Norway spruce whole genome to determine outlier SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphism. At this stage, we identified 13 SNPs under balancing selection and 23 under divergent selection. Now we continue working with these markers that looks very promising because they are cheap and can be implemented in very simple laboratories having just basic PCR equipment. And we go to general conclusions. Russia has one of the greatest resource potential in the forest sector in the world. Major threats and extensive management of forest has already led to exhaustion of resource base and erosion of forest genetic resources. Development of new intensive technologies and innovative approaches should be combined with appropriate adjustment of legislations and special attention to conservation of biodiversity in native forest. Sorry. And Russian forests can be used as a platform for interdisciplinary, interdepartmental, and international collaboration to ensure their sustainable use in national and world economics, socio-ecology, and as a test sites for research of natural dynamics of biodiversity, including spatial, genetic, and ecological levels of diversity. Thank you for your attention.
Gracias por sus atenciones. Rusia, un país desconocido para muchos de nosotros, pero muy interesante. Llama algunas cosas la atención independientemente de las grandes extensiones que tiene. La importancia que están desarrollando un plan estratégico a desarrollar hasta el 2030, ¿sí? Llama también la atención el decremento de la producción. Y lo natural en ellos es que manejan miles de millones, lo que nosotros no estamos muy acostumbrados a eso. Llama también la atención, como lo referían también en el día de ayer el Hans, en el caso de la República de Chile. Otra situación que llama la atención de Rusia son sus valores socioculturales. Millones de personas dependen de la actividad forestal, ¿sí? Y llama también la atención la importancia que está tomando los valores ambientales, la recreación en las grandes ciudades. Y llama la atención también lo que refieren ellos como la ecología humana, la producción de aire y agua limpio. Entonces, con estos datos tan interesantes, como también que refieren que algunas superficies de pino y encino por los malos manejos los convierten a masas de álamos y arces, ¿sí? Con ustedes estamos para la sesión de preguntas y respuestas. Cristian, ¿algún comentario?
Bueno, quiero solo presentar también la señora Olga Letman. Creo que ella es la persona que llegó más lejos a México, porque ella nació en Kamchatka, ¿sí? Y con 15 años ella regresó a Alemania y ahora está en Durango, casado con un mexicano, tiene niños mexicanos apenas aquí y encontramos hace 3 semanas y ella quiere ayudarnos si son las preguntas complicadas y bueno, ella habla bien español y ruso y muchos otros idiomas.
La forma de las preguntas pueden ser directas o si quieren pasarlas por escrito, si son tan amables, ¿sí? Llama también la atención las oportunidades de mejora que ahí está refiriendo, más de 30 millones de hectáreas abandonadas agrícolas que están susceptibles a reforestación, ¿sí? Entonces, con este tipo de situaciones, invitamos a todos los asistentes a que participen con sus preguntas, sus comentarios. Mientras, por favor, a una persona que nos auxilie que baja con los micrófonos, por ahí hay 1 o 2 micrófonos para el público. A ver, las señoritas edecanes, si son tan amables, acá las necesitamos, por favor. Joven, por favor, ahí.
So if I understood right, it is overrepresented in the forest, birch and larch. My question is if that is and less represented pine in the central and eastern side. Is that because the ecological conditions are good for larch and birch, or because consequences of a management? And if it is a management reason, what do you think was the wrong decisions? Because I understand that the management was very centralized control by a economy run by the state in the past. So what happened? So if it is management, what do you think were the wrong decisions, if there were?
As much as I understood, you are asking why larch and birch is overrepresented in some regions.
If I understood right that part.
There's no common answer to this general question, because larch forest is primary forest and it is still overrepresented in many regions of Siberia because no other tree can grow there. Eastern Siberia, especially its northern part, is almost pure larch forest with some admixture of soft-leaved trees and in some regions in the mountains with Siberian dwarf pine. And large forests are already cut only in those regions where there are roads. But they still occupy vast territories. As to birch, they are mostly secondary forest, because after cutting conifers, it looks like the ecosystem should go through succession. Spruce cannot grow under spruce. And spruce forest, when it's cut, is replaced by birch. And only under birch grows next generation of spruce. This is how it works. But to make this process more rapid, we need to make management and millions of hectares of such birch forest to help spruce come again.
Okay.
And we have no resources for this. That's why birch is overrepresented in such vast territory.
So I may have missed this, but how important, or is it important, of artificial regeneration, and are there tree improvement operations going on?
Yeah. Now, according to Forest Code, the contractor who takes the wood is responsible for regeneration. So if they are licensed, they do artificial regeneration on this lot by themselves. If not, they invite somebody who has a license to do this. This is how it works. The problem is that this is not done very professionally, and after submitting all documents, the dense young forest is left as is. But the management should continue. Like in Soviet time, it was like a never-ending process. Now it's done only to do like formalities. That's the difference. That's why it grows so slow, and that's why the value of such secondary forest, even with regeneration of the same species, goes not so smooth.
Por favor, su nombre e institución, son tan amables en sus participaciones.
Ciro Hernández, de la Universidad Juárez, Estado de Durango. Quería preguntar qué tan importante es en Rusia la actividad forestal, qué porcentaje del Producto Interno Bruto viene de la actividad forestal.
The percentage of forest sector in the gross national product is slightly above 1%, 1.2%. This is the last value that I know. In the structure of Russian economy, the mineral sources of energy, electricity and other stuff plays much more important role. But there are several documents that develop specially to increase the level of renewable sources like forest, and hopefully in near future this percent will increase. I can also say, like in export of total products, forest takes also not first and not even fifth place. It's about 2% of total export.
Hugo Ramírez Maldonado, de la Universidad Autónoma Chapingo. ¿Cuáles son las formas de propiedad de los bosques en Rusia y los trámites en el gobierno para hacer cosecha y cultivo forestal?
Only one type of ownership, only state property for forest. This is the only type of property that forest code allows. And the main mode of management is lease for 49 years. So contractor has the state land with forest, and at some point they can do logging, reforestation. This is the main type of management.
¿Alguien más? Resaltando la importancia de los bosques de Rusia, que tienen el 20% de la vegetación forestal del mundo y que está muy susceptible a lo del cambio climático. Adelante, doctora Rebeca.
Gracias. Rebeca Álvarez, de Politécnico. Doctor, I want to ask you how important are corn insects for this kind of losses in genetics and seeds? You mentioned that there is a high loss, seed losses, and how important are insects in your country?
How important are
You mentioned the loss of the genetic resources, seeds and others.
Yeah.
The question, how do you do it with this problem?
Yeah. Actually, this question is very interesting, and it implies several included questions, because first of all, to estimate loss of genetic variability, we need to have some 0 point. And it's very difficult to do even screening the genetic variability on millions of hectares. There were several attempts. How can we just do the estimation of genetic variation for standard set of molecular markers? And this work was done for maybe 20 to 25% of the territory for only selected species. And it was like never ending, because we need more and more resources for this, and government doesn't have these resources. It's not like in many countries where private businesses can provide science also with grant, etc., to do this work. And I'm, as a representative of science, can state that alone we cannot do this work. That's why I'm always searching for international collaboration. The problem of losing genetic variability is an international problem, and Russia here has an advantage because we really have pristine native forests. So they can be used as test sites, not only for estimation the current state genetic structure, but also for investigation of natural dynamics processes that lead to increasing or decreasing of genetic variability, to reveal the key factors of genetic variability dynamics.
Llama la atención también que se presenta mucho los aprovechamientos ilegales, ¿sí? Como también la superficie afectada por los incendios. ¿Alguna otra participación? Si no es así, perdón, allá hay una participación, si son tan amables.
It's very difficult.
Okay, if I'm right, you mentioned that you have more forest loss because of illegal logging than fires in the forest. So could you give us a deeper answer about the work that Russia do to fight against illegal logging?
Yeah, this problem has been discussed for many years, and we start from, we have no official statistics. And it's very difficult to have official statistics on unofficial process. So illegal logging can be detected from space, of course, and we do this work with Russian Academy of Sciences from cosmic, from space photographs. We can determine some places where illegal logging can take place. And then, for example, we have a set of trunks at Russian-Chinese border, for example. This is a very typical situation. And we need the particular technique how to prove that this is a legal wood, because sometimes it really has some documents. These documents refer to some particular cutting place. But with molecular markers, we can go to this place, take samples from the trunks, take samples from the logs, and find correspondence between them. If we do this, it would be direct evidence for trial. But on this way, we are very far from consensus because there's no available techniques for this, for such a large territory, for all species. We are just working on developing these techniques. And second, we don't have legislation that would clearly allow using this molecular data in criminalistics. Did I answer your question? Mm-hmm.
Tenemos otra participación. Aquí adelante, por favor. Señoritas con el micrófono.
Sí. Buenas tardes. Muchas gracias. Quisiera que nos comentara cuál es la estrategia que está implementando Rusia o están contemplando implementar para hacer lo que aquí en México se llama reconversión productiva, para reforestar todas aquellas áreas que ahorita están desprovistas de arbolado. También me gustaría, si nos lo pudiera explicar en español la señorita. Ahorita no tenemos traductor y está un poco complicado. Mucha gente, yo creo que estamos con la cara de Juat, pero estamos haciendo el esfuerzo por entender toda la explicación. Sí, gracias.
Which is the strategy that you use to recover the agricultural lands was abandoned to recuperate for forests? See? And would you speak using short sentences because they don't have translation, I will try to do.
Mm-hmm. So you mean abandoned forest land or agricultural land?
Agricultural land was abandoned and you recovered to forest, which is the strategy. Okay, use short sentences, please.
Yeah. When I mentioned the agricultural land covered by forest, this doesn't mean that there were some attempts to convert it to forest. Forest grows by itself on such land. Ну, они спрашивают, какие усилия были предприняты, чтобы перевести вот эти заброшенные сельскохозяйственные земли в лес. Я имею в виду совсем другое. Лес растет на них сам по себе. Это первое предложение можно перевести, а потом продолжить.
Primero, piensa, señor, que lo que él quería decir que el bosque crece precisamente en los territorios abandonados, ¿sí? Eso es lo que él quería aclarar. ¿Era esta la pregunta?
¿Cuál es la estrategia del país?
Ya.
Para lograr la reconversión productiva, lograr reforestar todas esas áreas que fueron agrícolas y que ahora están abandonadas. Acá en México se hace a través de algunos programas del gobierno, y quisiera que nos explicara esa parte.
Из первого перевода, что речь идет о заброшенных сельскохозяйственных землях. Для них никаких программ нет. Лес растет на них сам, потому что условия позволяют. Потому что эти земли когда-то были лесом. Условия там вполне для леса подходящие.
Я поняла, что невозможно этим заниматься, потому что
нет закона, да, нет закона. Вот это вот.
И он спрашивает, почему нет закона, что хотят сделать.
Yeah, so the question was, what is the strategy for converting abundant agricultural land to forest? There is no particular strategy because forest grows on such land by itself. And
¿No hay una estrategia en particular para esa recuperación?
Yeah, and the problem is how to develop the legislation, the law that would
El problema es cómo volver a establecer esa regeneración.
That would allow to use this forest, manage this forest, and also make a special plantations on such land. At the moment, there's no such law, and non-governmental organizations pay attention that we should develop it.
Por lo pronto no hay esas plantaciones, pero es parte de la estrategia que se debe seguir la regeneración.
There was interesting situation with this abandoned agricultural land related to Kyoto Protocol for carbon sequestration. Russia applied to Kyoto Commission if they probably give Russia money as to many other countries. But Kyoto Commission said, no, we don't need money. Forest grows by itself. So you have a lot of Kyoto forest just for free.
Como resumen, no existen programas estatales, porque no existen programas estatales porque no existen leyes para esto, ¿sí? Entonces, el gobierno no invierte en reforestaciones. Esto lo hacen la gente privada, las compañías privadas. Así es. No hay programas como en México, que CONAFOR paga reforestaciones. No hay.
Bueno, ¿alguien más? Pues le agradecemos la participación al doctor Dmitry, muy amables.
Gracias.
El doctor Cristian le hará entrega de un recuerdo. Los invitamos a que pasen al estacionamiento para que visiten la Expo Forestal y observen cómo puede trabajar la maquinaria forestal. Muchas gracias por su participación y continuamos por el programa.
Thank you very much for the